Manish Tiwari, respond to what you've heard. The fact is that inflation is a global problem at 7.01%. India is better off than many countries. The US at 9.1%, UK 9.4%. The world, Russia at 15.9%. We are better off.
Well, Rajdeep, the question is that are we really better off? Or is this really a mythical play of numbers? Now, if you were to look at the wholesale price index, headline inflation has been in double digits, now going back 14 months, which essentially puts you right in the middle of the second wave of COVID-19. And now comes the paradox. The existing paradox is that consumer food price index was at 1.96% in the April of 2021. It climbed to 8.8% in the April of 2022, before moderating slightly to 7.75% in the June of 2022. Now, what this essentially means is that you had already started going up the inflationary curve even as we were getting into the second wave of COVID-19. And the food price inflation actually followed the headline inflation number. So it is not something which is a consequence of the Russian-Ukrainian war or quick supply lines, as the government would like to make it out to be. In fact, the problem really dates back in time, and had the government taken effective measures to address it, they may have ended up arresting it.
So you are actually saying that the inflation pressures had begun even pre-Russia-Ukraine war. Therefore, you claim that the government of India cannot solely blame the supply deficiencies, linkage breaks because of war for rising inflation. Am I correct? Is that how I understand it?
You're absolutely correct. And may I also add another thing, that you see, the Russian-Ukrainian war started on the 26th of February 2022. Now, most of the sub-Saharan African countries have been badly hit primarily because grain imports from Ukraine came down to zero. But India does not import grain. In fact, if I can put it a little cynically, we have been beneficiaries of the Russian-Ukrainian war so far because we bought oil, crude oil at discounted prices from Russia. We've actually got fertilizer at discounted prices from Russia, because essentially they are trying to sell around the world to fill up their war chest. So in a very perverse sense of the word, till now we've been beneficiaries of that conflict rather than being victims.
Okay. Jai Panda, you want to respond to that? Because when I look at the numbers, the fact is that wholesale inflation in particular, even pre-Ukraine, was in double digits. December 2021, 14.27, January 2022, 13.68, February 2022, 13.11. So inflation was already steadily climbing.
Rajdeep, this is one of those rare situations where a global event, in this case the conflict in Ukraine, has had a severely negative impact on almost every country in the world. And it's not just about grains, as you know, it's also about fuel. And the reality is that while India has managed to keep its inflation, and what is really important for the Indian citizen, the common citizen, is not the wholesale price index, but the consumer price index. And so that has been kept at just above 7%, which is actually quite a remarkable feat, because, you know, if you look at other nations, you look at the US, for instance, has more than 9% inflation, which is something like a tripling or a quadrupling of their typical inflation. And the same thing goes for many other very strong economies, whether it is in the UK or other European countries. This came on top of another black swan event, which was the COVID pandemic, which hit all countries in the world. Now, the reality is India bounced back better than almost every other country and has been showing high growth rates and has been controlling inflation far better than any other country. Now, I can keep on giving you statistics, but as the finance minister quoted, let me also quote a former RBI governor who is a very well-known economist, Raghuram Rajan, and he is particularly celebrated by my friend Manish Tiwari's party, who has on the record just this week stated that India has done a remarkably good job of managing inflation vis-a-vis other countries, especially our neighbors. And he has gone on to say that his successors at the RBI today have done a remarkable job in keeping the Indian economy in very fine fettle. Now, let me explain. This is important because these are global factors which are affecting every other country, and India has done far better than every other country. Now, sometimes inflation happens due to poor domestic policies, as when the UPA government term ended and when the Modi government began, we inherited an inflation rate of more than 9%, and that was not related to any significant global event in 2014. It was because of policy paralysis internally. And so here you have celebrated economists whom the Congress party reveres, saying that India under the Modi government has done a stupendous job in managing its domestic policies and managing inflation.